G'day and welcome to Lamb Talk. I'm your host, Catherine Fennick. Lamb Talk is a weekly podcast that is all about lamb and a little bit about life. Today, we're going to be talking to my good friend and TV chef, Christy Rost, about how lamb plays such an important role in her work and has been the foundation of our friendship. Let's take a listen. Good morning, Christy. How are you?
Hey, good morning, Kate. I'm great. It's so good to hear your voice.
Yep. Well, I'm calling all the way from Tauranga, New Zealand, and you're in Colorado, right?
I am. I'm in Breckenridge, Colorado.
Awesome.
And I'm not quite sure what time of day it is there, but here it is early afternoon.
Well, it's the following morning at 9 o'clock for us, and it's a wet, rainy day. Overcast, but it's still about 50 degrees, so it's pretty nice.
Degrees, that sounds wonderful.
Yep.
I think
although the kids are feeling a bit
this morning.
It's a little chilly where you are.
So anyway, I'm so honored that you asked to speak with me today about lamb, and which of course is your first love, and it's pretty high on the list for me too.
Well, that's right. I remember the first time we ever met was at your home in Breckenridge with an IACP, International Culinary Professionals Association conference, and it was a side tour all about lamb, wasn't it?
Yes, and at that point we were talking about Colorado lamb in particular, but yes, it was a wonderful day. So many members came up to Breckenridge from Denver on the bus, and I was able to welcome everybody to our home here in Breckenridge called Swan's Nest, which was built in 1898, and I had the great pleasure of meeting you, Kate, and your husband, Kent, and hosting you here for a lovely lamb luncheon. And we got talking, and we've been friends ever since.
We have, and we met again in Portland, Oregon, again at an IACP conference, and then you honored us with a visit to North Dakota.
Yes, it wasn't long after Portland that you contacted me and said, "Hey, come on to North Dakota and let's do some things together with lamb." And boy, was that a hoot! I had a blast. It was my first trip to North Dakota, and you were gracious enough to host me in your home, and I got to meet your boys and spend a little more time with Kent, and then you and I drove all over North Dakota, it seemed, with a grill on wheels behind, and I just remember we were both so tired we were laughing the whole time to keep each other awake.
Well, that's about what it was. We covered quite a few miles and a lot of territory. We were at farmers markets. You did an interview for Prairie Public Radio. We were at Dan's Supermarket in Bismarck, and then we finished up in Minot, didn't we, with a local foods festival for the farmers markets?
We certainly did, and the thing I remember most is how well you and I ate the whole time, because we were cooking up lamb as quickly as we could and serving it to people throughout all of those locations, and then what they didn't eat, you and I did.
That's right. We weren't hungry. Christy, it was
a grand adventure, and this is yet another one, because now I'm speaking to you, and you're in New Zealand, and I'm in Colorado, and I'm so excited to be on Lamb Talk.
Yeah, well, that's right. With the progression from Catherine's for Lamb and selling the business, and then moving to New Zealand, at least for the medium term, to be closer to my family and watch the boys grow up with their cousins. I have wanted to keep my lamb interest and promotion of lamb going. My contacts with my North Dakota clients and friends, with the likes of yourself. And so this seemed like a perfect opportunity to expand that again. And so on a weekly basis, I'll be bringing, or Lamb Talk will be bringing the Lamb Show to the internet, and we'll be talking about all things lamb. And you are my first guest, and so thank you very much. And I'm sure you'll become a regular.
Well, thank you. I'm very honored to be your first guest on Lamb Talk, Kate. Thank you.
Christy, when was your first experience with lamb, either as a living animal or in a book or as an eating, or all three? What was your progression into the world of lamb?
Well, I really think my first experience with lamb was as a child, and it was on my plate. I grew up in the Midwest primarily, Pennsylvania, in the earliest years, and it was not unusual to have a leg of lamb, particularly at Easter time. And so I'm sure that was my first experience, though in those days it tended to be more mutton than spring lamb, and so the flavor was much more pungent. I think that's why some people in the Midwest still, may not be real fond of lamb, because they had it so many years ago as mutton, and they haven't realized that, wow, lamb has come a long way when it comes to the market now. It's younger, it's much more flavorful, it certainly has a much more delicate flavor, and but I always liked it, even as a kid, even when it was mutton. And so I think as I got more into cooking on my own, when I had, was then an adult and was cooking on my own, then I started to cook lamb chops. And I think for somebody who's not really, real familiar with lamb, that's a great place to start, because lamb chops are easy to cook. They're flavorful. You can do so many things with them, and then progress from there into lamb sirloin or cubes or rack of lamb or lamb roasts. And I remember when we lived in Paris years ago. Randy and I were in Paris, France, for a year, and our boys were real little then. And I used to go to the boucherie, and Monsieur Derain, my butcher, he loved when I walked in, because his eyes always got real big. He knew that that an American buys a lot more meat than a Frenchman does, because in France, people tend to buy one or two little slices. If they want lamb chops, they'll buy one, or they'll buy two little lamb chops, whereas I would buy a lot of lamb chops. And it was going to be Easter time, and I went in to Monsieur Derain, and I said, bonjour, and we exchanged pleasantries, and I told him that I would like a leg of lamb. And, of course, he was so excited, and he got out this beautiful leg of lamb, and he showed it to me. He said, how much would you like? And he started, this much, as he moved down. And I looked at him, I said, no, Monsieur Train, I want the whole thing. And he goes, the whole thing. I think he thought I was about to put his child through college. And so he took this leg of lamb, Kate, and he took his sharp knives and he decorated it and scored it beautifully to put this beautiful pattern into the real thin layer of fat that was over the top. It was the prettiest leg of lamb I ever saw. I'm sure I paid to the nose for it, but anyway, it was absolutely spectacular. And to this day, I still love to cook a leg of lamb.
Is the leg of lamb your favorite?
I would say my favorite is rack of lamb, to be honest.
It's very elegant, isn't it?
A close second, but a rack of lamb, my experience with rack of lamb is that it's always been served in an exquisite restaurant, and that is always associated with fond memories for me, generally that would be something like an anniversary or something. So when I think of rack of lamb, I usually think of very special occasions. And
yep.
But I absolutely adore cooking it. I would say that is my favorite.
Right. Well, it's a very elegant cut of meat, isn't it? There's something about it that the bones are delicate. There's not a lot of meat, but there's enough. And if you're going to use meat as in a romantic tone, it's about the best way you can do it is the rack.
I think so, too. And I think that's why it's such a popular dish for Valentine's Day, because it is elegant and it is romantic. And, these days you don't just put those chops on the plate. You slice in between each of the ribs and you arrange it on the plate beautifully so it either creates a little tower or maybe it's a pretty spiral or something. There are so many ways that it can be served that makes it very, very elegant. And the meat is always so tender and so juicy and flavorful. Right.
And so now, as a regular cut, what would be your favorite regular cut? The rack is a special occasion, most romantic. On an everyday basis, if you were to have lamb, what cut would you use and what recipe?
Okay, there would be two that I would select, and one would be chops, because I can do lamb chops with red currant mint sauce, and I can have those done in 20 minutes and on the plate. Or another that I really, really like, I developed a couple years ago, and that is, and in fact, you and I cooked this one, and that's the grilled Moroccan lamb kebabs. And in that case, for the kebabs, I use sirloin, and it's very tender, and I slice it and then cut it into cubes, about 1-inch cubes, and then just thread it onto skewers with some zucchini squash, red onion, and that kind of thing, and then serve it with a tzatziki sauce. And I've actually done that for a big wine and food festival, and it was a tremendous hit. And so it's great for an everyday kind of meal because it's quick and easy to put together, but at the same time, it works very well if you have a crowd. And it's great for a party. And serve it with the tzatziki, but serve it on couscous or rice or something like that. And it's so that I love the sirloin for something, for that kind of a dish.
I remember that. It was awesome.
Yeah, it was pretty good, wasn't it? You and I noshed on a few of those.
We did. We did that at the West Fargo Farmers Market on the Thursday night. And did you do that at the Minot Farmers Festival on the Saturday?
I did it
what did you do that day?
I did it in Minot. Yes. And everybody seemed to love that. I always love to serve a lot of vegetables with my meals anyway, and so it's a nice, easy way to incorporate some veggies into one dish. And you can add in sweet peppers of different kinds. Green bell pepper, red bell pepper. You can put in squash. You can put in little onions. You can put in all kinds of different things, mushrooms, whatever, and then you've got that beautiful juicy lamb there that's so flavorful, and then you've got all your veggies, and it's all on a skewer, and boom, there's your meal. So and it's fun. You can in this case we did a tzatziki, but it's also really good to do some kind of a barbecue sauce on that, and
yes.
so it's that's a really nice meal for a warm weather or a nice cooler outdoor grilling kind of weather. So I love that. And I've even made it inside in a grill pan. So it works really well that way, too. Mm-hmm.
Yep.
I'll send you that recipe, and that way maybe you would like to include it on your Lamb Talk website. Yes.
We'll associate that with this interview. That would be wonderful,
okay.
Christy.
Super. super. That way
Awesome.
people who listen today can, they can find the recipe and then just, whip that out.
Yep. And then do you have it listed on your website? Can we link the two together?
I believe it is there. I certainly can make sure that it is there. And I would also include the lamb chops with red currant mint sauce there. And my website is ChristyRost.com. That's www.ChristyRost.com.
Excellent. Well, we'll make sure that that's all linked together, and they can pull both those recipes from either website. And mine is www.lambshow.com, and we'll be linking over to you, Christy, on that.
Oh, that sounds wonderful.
You're making me very hungry.
I'm on Facebook, so in fact, on my website homepage, you can click right onto my Facebook account and actually see the text, my latest entries, right there on my homepage. So I'll make sure to mention that as well, and people will be able to link to you just as easily.
Wonderful, wonderful. And what projects have you got up your sleeves right now, Christy?
I do have a project up my sleeve, but it's going to be about another week before I can tell you what it is.
Oh, dang it. I'm going to have you back.
And that would be so fun. And I'll be sure that there'll be some lamb in there.
That sounds even better. Well, that sounds like a whole other interview, doesn't it?
Hey, I know how to do it. But truthfully, Kate, I've been here in the States. I've been working more with public television, and in particular Rocky Mountain PBS. And so we are. I did a live Facebook conversation with a wonderful group of PBS chefs, and we did that in November, just shortly before Thanksgiving. And it was our second annual show. This one was called the Thanksgiving Table and Beyond. And so for an hour, we had this wonderful real-time conversation, and there were people from all over the United States who jumped into the conversation, and they got to ask questions of their favorite PBS chefs. So that was really, really exciting. Then I have this project that I can't quite talk about yet, but we'll be able to hopefully soon. And then I'm out and about traveling in 2012. I already have some things scheduled for classes and appearances and all, and some food and wine events. So I'm out and about and just having a blast.
Oh, sounds excellent. Well, I don't want you to have to tell me and then kill me, so we'll schedule another interview for the launch of your next project.
That sounds good. I'll let you know.
And I caught some of your Facebook interaction. It was just prior to our departure to New Zealand, and so I could just observe it for a period of time, and then I had to buzz out. But it looked interesting. It really did. It was a novel way to do it, and it looked like you had quite a bit of interest and people buzzing in from all over the country.
You know, it was really fascinating. The one last year was of course, anytime you start something, it's always small when you start. But it was, we considered it a successful conversation because the PBS chefs themselves were so excited about it. And the energy in the room at Rocky Mountain PBS was, it couldn't have been any higher. But this year, when we did in the November show of 2011, it was such a vibrant conversation because we had garnered so much interest around the country, and of course later on you discover that other people are in on the conversation, though they didn't participate, but they were there, and the excitement among the public television chefs was very high again, and we did have a lot who returned this year for the second time, but the excitement level and the interest and the knowledge base of the home cooks who participated, that's what I found really, really exciting and fascinating. And so that was a really great conversation, and we should have a link to that on my website by the time this conversation airs on Lamb Talk. So I think people may want to click on that by visiting my website, ChristyRost.com, and there will be a link to that Facebook conversation, so you can actually see what was discussed and all. So we'll have that up there.
Excellent. Are you going to do a similar one for Christmas?
For Christmas of 2012, I don't know. I don't know. I can see that we might try and do it again the fall of 2012. That seems to work well timing-wise. At Christmas time, people are so busy, and that includes all these public television chefs. So trying to wrangle everybody together in time for Christmas is not always an easy task. But we'll see what develops. We'll see, because it's obviously a formula that works well, and I'd kind of like to do it more than once a year. So we'll see what we can cook up.
Yeah. Oh, maybe you'll have to do a lamb one for the build-up for Easter.
Now you're talking.
Now we're making some progress.
It's a great idea.
Wow. Dang it, that's another interview.
Yeah. You and I are going to have a good time, Kate, but then we always did.
We always do, don't we? We always do, yep. We kind of spark off each other.
Oh, gosh, it's wonderful.
Now what's going to be on your table for Christmas this year?
To be honest, and of course, by the time this airs, Christmas will be past. But actually, we are going to visit my parents for Christmas this year, and so I don't have total control of the menu. But I suspect there may be a turkey there because it is my father's absolute favorite. And
that has to be there.
See that. And then it'll be up for grabs whether the other thing in the oven turns out to be a ham or whether it turns out to be lamb. So we'll see. I'll see if I can have a little influence there.
So even a celebrity TV chef has to bow down to the mother?
It's still Mom's kitchen.
It's still Mom's kitchen.
It's always been Mom's kitchen.
Oh, is that so true?
And it's always best that way. It keeps peace in the family. And my mom's a wonderful cook. So, but the house will be filled with really just a great group of cooks. So I have a feeling that kitchen is going to be doing overtime.
I can imagine it right now. Yep. And I'm sure you learned a lot of your fundamentals from your mum, too.
Yeah, my mom did not know how to cook when she got married, and I didn't find that out for many years. But she said that her mother never let her kids in the kitchen. So when my mom got married, she really did not know how to cook. So she either taught herself or had others who helped her. I still remember when I was a little girl and we lived in Massachusetts, her asking the fishmonger how to prepare various types of fish. And she would go home and she would do that. And so I think she was very much a self-taught cook. And so when we started to express interest in cooking or baking or whatever, she was always anxious for us to go ahead and try and do what we could. And my interest really was baking in the early years, and it's still a passion that comes out tremendously during the holidays, but I've always loved to bake, and so that's how I started. And her only rule was I could do as much as I wanted as long as I cleaned up my mess when I was done. So
I have the same rule with Sean, my middle one. He loves to cook too, but you have to clean up after yourself.
It's important, and it does keep the peace too. But it teaches it teaches good habits in the kitchen. I think cooking is very fun, and cooking, baking, whatever, very, very fun, very creative. But it helps to have a sense of organization. And if you learn as a child to clean up as you go or to clean up when you're finished, that helps create that sense of organization, which I think is very important. And it doesn't take the fun out of it. It just helps you stay organized and to be a little more methodical about it, I think. But anyway, so
right.
I did a lot of baking as a kid, and then as I got older, of course, then when I went off to college, I cooked all my own meals, and it was great because I had a foundation. We always ate together as a family, and when I was growing up, and so I had a foundation of a balanced meal, and I did that while I was off at college, and then when I got married, I continued that, and I still do. Randy and I still sit down together every evening to have our meal together. And when our boys were growing up and home, we always ate as a family then too. And the sense of a balanced meal was something that stayed with me, that there was protein and there were carbs and lots of vegetables and fruit and all. And I still cook that way.
Sounds wonderful. And eating as a family is very important, isn't it?
I think so, too. I really do. And I know that's what you've always done. And it's a great time. You've got three young boys growing up. And it's a great way to stay connected with your family when you sit down and enjoy a meal together.
Exactly. Yep. It's kind of unifies the family and grounds it back to the group, so that whatever you're doing, you've got a group and they know where their support mechanism is. Yeah,
and I think the older the kids get, the more and more that comes into play, and especially when kids hit those teenage years, sometimes I'd hear stories from friends or acquaintances who were dealing with kids the same age as mine, and I remember so often thinking, well, that's interesting. That's not happening here, and I don't seem to be having those problems, and I really think a lot of it had to do with the fact that we communicated with our kids and they communicated with us because we sat down together every single evening and enjoyed a meal together, and some of those meals were kind of wild, as the kids were really excited about things, and we're still learning some of the social graces of sitting at the table, but boy, and I know you can identify with that right about now, Kate. But,
yes. But it's even more fun as the kids grow and they become part of the process of making the meal as well.
And
then eventually they'll have a night where they cook for themselves, for the family, and really take possession of the event and of the ingredients and the choice of menu. And you see their imaginations developing and their likes and dislikes with food and the adventurous nature that comes out.
Yes, and don't you think that when kids help prepare a meal that their dislikes are actually relatively few?
Oh, yes. Yeah. It's more, it seems like it's more a function of we can't agree because that's our job to disagree. But when they've been part of the process, they're far more agreeable and workable and want to be more adventurous.
I think so too. I think they see the food in its raw state and they are much more interested in it when they are helping to prepare it, or when they are in charge of preparing it. Even better.
I think they feel like they've got some control of choices and decisions And so they're more positive about things. When it's just all laid out for them and there's no choices for them, they feel like they've got no control of anything.
Yeah. I think the kitchen is a great equalizer in relationships, because when everyone has a part in what happens in the kitchen, then it kind of puts you all on the same foundation. And I really do think that kids tend to make better food choices and are more adventuresome eaters when they've had a part in preparing meals.
Right. Well, I think we're covering a whole nother section, children in the kitchen.
Yes. And that's a fun topic.
Oh, isn't it? But I think too that when you are in the kitchen preparing meals from scratch, the nutrition that is being fed to these young bodies and minds is beneficial as well. And so you've got a more active, healthy mind and body and soul when the family cooks and eats together.
I could not agree more. I think it's so important. And I always remember something that my friend Martin Yan said, public television chef Martin Yan of Yan Can Cook, and he said, if you think about humanity in terms of since it began, he said cultures have always sat down together to share a meal, whether it was around the fire or in a home or in the woods or on the plains, wherever they were. They always gathered together to share a meal. And he said it is a fundamental need and function of humanity to do that. And anything that we can do to encourage people to come back to that as often as they can is really an important mission.
I couldn't say it better.
So
food and communication are so fundamental to being human.
I think so. And to being social. And
yes.
And of course that has always been one of my greatest missions ever since I got into culinary, was bringing people back to the table, getting them to gather around with family and friends. And there are few times more important and more fun and more fulfilling than when you get to do that. And I think that's one of the reasons I enjoyed so much my trip to North Dakota to be with you and your family, because we had the opportunity to do that, Kate. And it is indeed a very self-fulfilling and just bonding experience to be able to share meals together. And now I've had the pleasure of being able to share this wonderful new lamb show with you, and I'm so grateful for that opportunity. And I really look forward to staying in contact, staying in touch, and hearing about how the lamb show grows.
Thank you very much, Christy. And I look forward to inviting you back many, many times.
Thank you so much, Kate. Much luck to you, and I'm sending hugs way across the ocean. And
I can feel them.
And thank you so much for having me as your guest today.
Thank you, Christy, for your time and contribution to Lamb Talk. You can find out more about Christy Rost by visiting our show notes on the blog. And thank you, my listeners, for helping make this podcast a success. You can find other episodes of Lamb Talk on our website at www.lambshow.com. You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/Lamb Show and on Twitter at twitter.com/Lamb Show. We would love to hear from you. Until next week, see you around the block.
This show is produced by Wild Inspire Media.